Welcome to the 2016 Commit Forum. I'm Elliot Clark. I am the CEO of SharedXpertise. We are the publishers of Corporate Responsibility Magazine, the hosts of the Commit Forum, and the managers of the Corporate Responsibility Association. I'd like to take a moment to thank our platinum sponsors, MGM Resorts, Waste Management, and Mosaic. Without their ongoing support for our efforts to advance the cause of corporate responsibility, we could not do what we do each year to drive best practice sharing, and that's really what this conference is about. I also want to thank this Westin Hotel and the Starwood Property Group, soon to be Marriott Starwood actually, for being a very good partner in our zero waste program, which is managed by Waste Management. I want to encourage you to think about, as you are consuming products throughout the conference, how to make sure that we minimize waste. I'd also like to thank all of our other sponsors for their support, as you see on the screen here. A big round of applause for our sponsors, please. Now, all of you know who I am now, okay? But it's important that you know who you are, or that you know who each. If you're not sure who you are at this point, you could either get therapy or write a book, okay, about self-discovery, which are both very positive things. Anyway, what I want you to do is an exercise that is familiar to those of you who were here last year, all right? I want you to stand up and be fearless, okay? And the next 3 minutes, introduce yourselves to as many people as you can, but you have to exchange the following information. There are rules to this gunfight, okay? Got to give them your name, got to give them your title, your company, and sort of like one sentence on what your important interests are at the conference. Could be networking, could be, God, I always want to see Elliot speak wherever he is. Whatever that is for you, feel free to say it, all right? And the person with the most cards at the end of 3 minutes, yeah, no, come on, I've done, so I want you to know, different cultures have different levels of competition. I did this in Asia, and it was unbelievable. We had like somebody had 26 cards in 3 minutes. I don't know how they did that. They were speed talking their way through most of Singapore. But the person with the most number of cards will win an Apple Watch right here, right now, product placement. So 3 minutes, it is an Apple Watch. Go. All right, let's just count your cards. Let's do this very quickly. We have a lot to do today. All right. How many people, by show of hands, all right, I want, first of all, who's the jerk who forgot to bring business cards? And all right, no, I'm kidding. All right, don't identify yourself in this crowd. All right, so who had more than 10 cards? Raise your hands. Okay, that's pretty good. Who had more than 15 cards? Raise your hands. All right, so if you had more than 10, hands back up. All right, you, sir, how many did you have? 11. 11. Ma'am? 15. Whoa, she's serious. How about you? All right, you win. You also have been named Networker Extraordinaire. I don't need the cards. There you go. They're for you. All right, so you got it a few minutes? Yeah, really. Networkers. All right, so you got to just briefly talk to a few other people. Go back, recycle later and go visit them and explore more of the conversations that you started, all right? So we have a great event in store for you, and we finished this evening with movie night at Commit, showing the film Generation Startup. Now there's a theater that is adjoining to the hotel. We will guide you over there later. This is an event sponsored by PricewaterhouseCoopers, so grab your popcorn and get a good seat. I understand it is a very emotional journey through the eyes of young entrepreneurs, some of whom will be with us later, trying to improve our world. I also want to recognize our shared expertise team whenever I get the chance. Will the shared expertise team members please stand up? I especially want to thank our Allie Williams, the Executive Director of CRA, Bill McCrae, our VP of Marketing, Debbie Bola, our Editorial Director, and Bill Lange, who's back there at AV, working hard to make sure I don't embarrass myself up here. So before I make some opening remarks, I want to say that last year, I was criticized by some of the attendees of this conference for singling out some companies with bad behavior, okay? Now, I try to do it in a humorous way, and I don't mean to offend, but I do believe that it's our responsibility to not only call out, as we do, the wonderful best practices of all of you, but to report and analyze violations of public trust. I'm going to be a bit controversial again, and I hope you can bear with me. Now, before I give opening remarks, I want to share a quick story. I'm Jewish, so I can do this. So we'll make this a rabbi. And he was approached by the president of his congregation one Sabbath after his sermon. The president says, "Rabbi, I've noticed that your sermons all take about 20 minutes. I was wondering, could you do one in 5 minutes?" So the rabbi thinks about it for a minute, strokes his beard, and says, "Yeah, I could do one in 5 minutes." And the president says, "Why don't you?" So I'm going to try to be quick with these, and this is a complex topic I'm about to talk about, because we have so many better speakers ahead in the next 2 days, and I promise you it is not a sermon. But there is an issue that has greatly concerned me. 2 events conspired to make me think about this issue. The first one was one of the biggest stories in corporate responsibility this year, Wells Fargo. Okay? It's hard to imagine a more disturbing case of perverse corporate culture. I think we're having a problem with the slides up here, so we're trying to get that up. There we go. It's so disturbing because they had developed a culture that was so aggressive that it seduced greedy people into cheating, or so punitive that it scared others into committing fraud to save their jobs. Now, when 5,300 employees are involved, it is a cultural failing. Now, I've written about this, and there's no more need to beat up on the failings of Wells Fargo today. However, Wells Fargo got a huge amount of media coverage, including in our magazine. Now, while I was looking at the Wells Fargo case, I got a call from what was a lower-level account manager at an ad agency representing a large company. I'm not going to name names. And the young man asked me how much it cost to be in the top 25 of the 100 best corporate citizens list. What's that cost? So I explained that we do not charge, and this was an editorial thing, that our business model is funded by sponsorship, attendance, or membership. Now, most of the funds that you all pay to us are funneled right back into educating each of you on best practices and creating these kinds of networking opportunities and educational opportunities. If anything, we should characterize your support as scholarship sponsorships. Think of it that way. The money you give helps educate other people so that the people at this table can learn best practice from the people at this table and vice versa. However, the advertising guy was undeterred by my explanation and said, "That's what everyone says about editorial, but what's it actually cost?" Now, I realized he's not just an advertising person. He's a consumer, too. And that got me thinking about the media. Now, the media gets debated in bold relief in presidential election cycles. And I wrote this long before the bias debate of the last weekend. I want to be really clear. I'm not talking about bias. I am not talking about the election. This is a business conference and really not the time or the place. My only comment on politics is that, like many Americans, I am relieved. I am relieved in the rock-hard assurance that on November 8th, one of these two is going to lose. Okay? I feel good about that. Someone's going to lose here. The media, I thought people would laugh harder at that because the poll suggests that everyone's sort of not happy with the choices. All right. Say, Bill, you shouldn't let me say that stuff. I blame him. All right. The media was once dubbed by Edmund Burke as the fourth estate, and here's the quote. It plays a critical role in a free society. And I'm part of the media, and that role extends well beyond political contests. It is actually the mirror that reflects back who we are. It was once seen as an immensely credible organ of our culture. It wasn't long ago that this man, Walter Cronkite, was the most trusted man in America. Now, if you know anything about Cronkite, he was extremely passionate about issues privately, but did not editorialize on screen and gave the facts left interpretation to the audience. Today, we've seen a vast erosion in the credibility enjoyed by Walter Cronkite. Now, this is a perception of media bias. Now, I'm not talking about political bias, just media bias, like the guy asking me what's it cost to get a placement on a list. According to a nonpartisan study by the Museum Institute, since 2004, the number of people thinking that all reporting is biased moved from 61%, which is high, to 76%. That means 3/4 of consumers of media feel it's being spun at them. More disturbing, according to this Gallup annual survey, confidence in the media has dropped from 53% to 32% in 19 years. 2 out of 3 people don't trust what they're hearing or reading. That is troubling. So what does this have to do with corporate responsibility? Well, everything. How do you tell your story? And, you know, we should all give up on the entertainment media. Everyone from Harrison Ford's The Fugitive to RoboCop were the victims of an evil corporation. How many of you work for evil corporations? All right, you're at the wrong conference, man. All right. So, yeah, Hollywood's always talking about evil corporations, all right? That's not who we really are. So tonight, in fact, we have the privilege to see one of the few movies that will tell a positive corporate story. And while we're talking about positive stories, how do very responsible organizations promote their CR successes? For example, companies like our CR Magazine CEO of the Year finalists from 2016 or 2015. Or, for that fact, 2014. I mean, dozens of companies. Or how about all the member companies that support the Corporate Responsibility Association? Now, many of these companies are in the room, and we only have enough room on the slide to show the top categories of membership. So I know you can tweet and use your Facebook page, etc., to tell your stories to an audience directly. But none of you have the reach of the mass media organizations. And if people read your positive story and they don't believe the media outlet, what are you to do? Cynicism about positive corporate efforts is as dangerous as bad stories. Wells Fargo was one bad story. And I didn't want to use it on the slide. There's actually a page from one of the big business pubs, and they had the entire page was Wells Fargo, different angles of the story. And then in the bottom corner, because they probably had 2 or 3 column inches left over if you know how newspapers are put together, was a positive story about one of the beverage companies donating money to a philanthropic scholarship program. So 97% of the column inches on that page were negative. There's one little thing tucked down in the corner. So if no one believes the hundreds of good stories from just this year, where are we? I think it's incumbent on all of us, whatever influences we have, to help the media meet its challenges and repair what is frankly a tattered reputation. We should exercise those options. I think it's incumbent on the corporate responsibility community to think not only about the message, but the medium, as credibility of the source is now also an issue. Now, just to reiterate, I wrote these remarks a month ago, before the media bias accusations that have been raised in the last week. Part of the reason I focused on this issue is we will be talking a great deal about brand reputation in many of the sessions that happened this morning and over the next 2 days. So that's it for my opening remarks. I appreciate your time and your attention.